Welcome, I am Loren Norris and you're watching storypower TV, and I am so glad that you're here today. We are in studio with Donna Clark today, and I want to welcome her to the studio because what we're going to talk about today is the impact that this person, historical figure, religious figure, there's so many different ways that people look at Jesus. People say he's a prophet. Some even say he's a good man. I heard someone say one time, he can't be a prophet and a good man and be a liar. So he's either a liar, he's a lunatic, or he's the Lord. What we want to talk about in these next series of interviews called the My Story of Jesus or My Jesus Stories is really, who is this guy to you? Is he a prophet? Is he a good man? Is he a lunatic? Or is he the Lord and Savior? And so today in studio we have Miss Donna Clark. Donna, thank you for being here. Now, you and I met through the John Maxwell team several years ago, but I think for a season we went to the same church on the same service and saw each other on a regular basis. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your journey with Jesus. How did you find him, or how did he find you, and what has that been like in your life?
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian church and a Christian home, all my life, and so I don't remember not knowing about Jesus, but when I really encountered him was when I was 11, and I had gone to a church camp for summer youth camp, and met him there, and at that point, he just shifted things. He changed everything. He changed how I saw things, it was mostly in just relating to him. So I felt like I related to him as this being intangible, just this rule giver before, and then when I encountered him at 11, it was more of, hey, I'm your best friend. I'm going to walk with you through life. And it shifted everything for me. So
tell me how your relationships changed with the people around you as Jesus became someone important in your life. Because I know, for an example, a lot of, especially teenagers and middle school to high school age, when a new friend comes in, a lot of friends get jealous. And especially, I raised two daughters, and there's a lot of drama that goes along with who's your best friend today and who's your best friend next week, and what if that changes, and how the dynamics change between the relationships. So tell me a little bit about what that journey was like for you, coming from youth camp and going back into the school system and your regular friends.
Yeah, so for me, the story I was told is everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
Bed of roses, and my life is going to be amazing after I got to know the Lord, and it wasn't the case. It actually got harder, much harder, and harder in relationships, harder in situations, just harder, and it was perplexing to me, and so I just really talked to him a lot, and you call it prayer, but it's really like we're having a conversation right now. That's how I talked to him then. It was like, I don't understand you, I don't get it, but what other choice do I have? And later on in life, I read that passage, Peter talked about, where else would I go?
Right.
What other options do I have? In my mind, I had no other options. It was either the Lord or nothing, and I wasn't willing to have nothing. So it basically made me encounter him in relationship. So it wasn't like a genie in the bottle relationship where I go with him with my request, and hey, you're the God of the universe, you can pay for my college. College is paid for. Genie in the bottle, you're going to stop the situation in my life that is not good. Didn't happen. I had to walk through things, and what I encountered is a God-man, Jesus, who encountered me and walked with me through it.
Now, when you say you had a conversation, I know there are a lot of people who struggle with the idea of having a conversation with the Almighty. Some are okay to say, well, I have a conversation with the universe, or, I have a conversation with a friend, or I talk to my priest. Generally speaking, a conversation implies that both people are talking. How do you have that or experience that conversation with the God you cannot see?
Yeah, it's a great question, Loren. It's an encounter that requires time. It requires you to stop things and actually pay attention and listen. So for me, it was getting in a spot where I wouldn't be distracted. And distractions are everywhere. It's a really hard thing nowadays to not be in a spot that you get your phone, you have your laptop, you have Facebook, you have the world, you have friends calling, you have things you need to do at church, or things you need to do in the community or work. It's just distractions, and you have to have a space that you set aside that is just you and him so you can listen. And it's like, when in any friendship or any relationship, you listen, you learn to listen. You learn how to listen to them. And so you learn how to be patient, how to listen for the still quiet voice. The encounters for me are not necessarily an audible voice that comes and says, Donna, do this in this situation. Never was. But he'd give me like a passage of scripture I'd been studying, or he'd remind me of something in the Word, or he would give me a sense of peace in a specific thing that I knew it was the right way to go. Or he'd drop me an idea, which I think is a wisdom nugget. An idea of how to handle a situation, which I would have never thought of if I hadn't taken time to be with him and ask him. And that's how it happened for me. I learned it. Now, was I great at it at 11? No. I did most of the talking.
Was I great at it yesterday?
Yeah, I'm not great at it. Do I think I'm great at it today? No. It's still a choice I have to make on a daily basis. Am I going to take the time and give him space and listen to the lover of my soul or not?
One of the things that I hear you're saying in that is that the skill of listening. Because I know that in relationship, especially in relationship, and I'm going to throw my own analogy on that and then ask if this is really what you're saying or if I heard something different, which is ironic because that's exactly what the analogy is. Recently, a friend of ours lost his mother. And my wife and I wanted to go to the funeral to support him, realizing that this tech thing is what we do. And so wherever we show up, people are like, oh, you're here, glad, because we got tech problems. And so that happens on a regular basis. But before we could even get out of the house, I was dressed in all black. It's a funeral. She's got on these bright flowery clothes. And I said, sweetheart, it's a funeral. And she just broke down, started crying. And I'm like, I don't have time for the drama today. Seriously, if it's that big a deal to you, stay home. I mean, I'm not trying to pressure you into going. You don't have to go. And she's like, no, I want to go. But she was really frustrated that I asked her to change. I didn't think anything other than, what's with the waterworks? You're not a teenager anymore, etc. Day or so goes by, and I'm having my own reflection time, and it dawns on me. This is roughly the 5-year anniversary of her mother taking her own life. This is the weekend before Mother's Day. We're going to bury a friend's mother. It didn't even get through my thick head because I was so focused on the task at hand. Get there on time, make sure everything works out, make sure there's no tech problems, make sure everything is good, make sure our friend is supported. And I was so in business mode, I wasn't thinking about my wife. And I think sometimes in our lives we forget that this Jesus character is a person. And there is a way to listen to what he says based on the way he communicates, based on the type of relationship we have with him. Other people may have a conversation with my wife and they catch on to that stuff right away, or never catch on to it at all because they don't know what I know. But something in the relationship changes the dynamic of how you listen and what you listen to. Okay, so that's my overlay to what you said. Is that pretty accurate to what you said?
No, absolutely. It's very correct. And what I found is if I have a situation with someone that I'm struggling with, it can be anything. It can be a judgment I'm making. I mean, we do that all the time.
Right.
We say we don't judge, but we do all the time. All of us do. And so I could be making a judgment, and if I ask the Lord, what do you have for this person? What are your thoughts towards them? He shifts what I see. He shifts how I view them. He gives me understanding. And it says in Proverbs, Lady Wisdom gives understanding. And so I want to be a person that understands. Yes, we have justice, right? But what triumphs over justice? Mercy.
Right.
So just gaining understanding from people and from him for people. And it shifts how everything works. When I do that, I have a better day. Every time. Hands down. When I don't do that, I get in my own flesh that's not pretty at all, and I handle things inappropriately. So he shifts how I work, how I live, how I respond. That's what Jesus, when I talk about he is the way, the truth, and the life, John 14:6, he shows me the way. He shows me the way in relationships. He shows me the way in my business. He shows me the way in dealing with my dog. Maybe she's sick. I don't know. He shows me the way. He is the way giver.
Right.
He's the way maker. Right. He's the life. He's the truth. The truth. He shows me what the truth is. We live in a world of deception and propaganda, and nobody knows what the truth is.
Right.
Well, I can go to him and he can show me the truth. He can give me understanding. And he's the life when I need him to breathe life into an area of my heart or my friendship or my family or anything. And my business that struggles, we all have businesses that ebb and flow and struggle. And I need life, if it feels like death, I need his life to breathe into me and into it. And he does that for me.
So one of the challenges that we see, like you said, there's so much deception everywhere. One of the cool features, and my boys and I still do it, we'll go to YouTube when there's something that's over our heads. Mm-hmm. We recently had to change wheel hub for wheel bearings on the front of a four-wheel drive vehicle. Used to be that set of instructions would have been in a children's manual of 900 to 1,000 pages, but now you can go to YouTube and type in wheel hub on four-wheel drive vehicle.
Yeah, minute and a half video, yeah.
And somebody's already done it. And so somebody can show you the path for it.
Yeah.
The ironic twist to that is there were a lot of people who would say, well, the Bible's just an antiquated book of old phrases and thoughts and ideas. And it's amazing when you look at someone like David Barton or a Steve Doolin or somebody who's actually studied Scripture through one lens. Whether it's, Dr. Caroline Leaf has done it through the relationship of communication pathology and neuroscience and said, what does the Bible say about psychology? Others have done it through American history. Others have done it through world history. Others have done it through finance. But it's ironic that when you go back to that book through that lens, there's something there. Mm-hmm. Like you said, it may be about my dog. And you think, okay, there's nothing in the book about schnoodles.
Yeah, right.
The Bible wasn't written for schnoodles 2,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago. When Moses started all this, no, he didn't know what a schnoodle was. Mm-hmm. And so how do we expect to find truth when the book is so much older than the experiences that we're having? When you talk about truth, how do you take truth from such a, for lack of a better term, antiquated source and bring it forward to the problem you're having today?
That's a great question. I ask for a whole lot of wisdom all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, I think what's troubling to me that's going on in our world right now is we've got so many variables coming at us that is saying, I'm speaking the truth. Media, Facebook, somebody's message on Facebook, somebody's opinion, and so they're all saying they have
the opinion of their opinion.
That's right.
Of somebody else's comment on the opinion.
And so we're bombarded with all these things constantly, and I'm like, Lord, how can everybody be right? We can't. We can't all be right. And so, but I do know the one person who is right all the time, and he's never wrong. So I have to ask him, okay, what's the truth in this? And many times it's going to the Word and making sure what I feel like I'm hearing lines up with Scripture, and that's a big one. And I don't feel like I'm like this pro Bible study person at all. I read every day. I spend time with them every day, but I don't know the Hebrew and Greek. I can look it up, but it's not. I don't have those words on the tip of my tongue,
right.
But he says, if you come to me, he will answer you.
Right.
Right? And so I have to trust. So I think part of it is trusting him. Trust that what he says he's going to do, he'll do. If I go to him, I need wisdom, he's going to give it to me. If I ask for truth, he's going to show me the truth. If I need understanding, he's going to give me understanding. If I need forgiveness, he's going to forgive me. He's always going to provide for me according to what his will is. Always.
And I think a lot of people miss that, according to his will. I saw something the other day that said, why don't you stop asking for money and blessing and fortune and etc. and ask that God extend your days on the earth. I was like, that's an interesting concept, because most people want the stuff. They want the things. They want this journey, this, as he says, vapor of a life to be jam-packed with all the good stuff. Mm-hmm. And the result of that often is we forget that this is minuscule by comparison, and it's intended to be on-the-job training. This really is an opportunity for us to figure out what it means to surrender and to worship and to seek after. I have fascinating conversations with people who have never experienced Pentecost in the way that the original seekers experienced Pentecost. And that passage, I believe it's Romans 8:5, he says, we have in us the same spirit that raised him from the dead. And when you let that settle in, you think, okay, so what does that mean? I think when you talk about asking for wisdom, it's imperative that we realize that there's a finite even amount of stuff written in the book. And we only know that because John said that. John said, look, if we tried to write down everything he said and did, there wouldn't be enough books in the world to hold it.
Yeah.
I mean, for a prayer individual, I have a pretty extensive library. But when we think about, there wouldn't be enough books in the world to just to write down what he said and did. Yeah. Then we have to back up and go, okay, so what did he not say? Well, what did he not reference? And then when we think about the Holy Spirit, it says he comes to comfort, teach, and remind. Remind us of what? Maybe all those things that he said and did that weren't even written down. And so the knowledge that we have access to relationally is even more in depth than we have historically. I mean, anybody can look it up. I can go watch a YouTube video, but if I'm watching the YouTube video and trying to explain to my son what I saw in the video versus, okay, so the guy in the video said use this kind of wrench and do it like this, and it didn't work for me. What did work for me? Well, that's what you want to know, right? Mm-hmm. Not that what he said didn't work for me, but what you want to know is what did work for me. And I think that's really where we go when we move into that relational aspect. A lot of people have said, just figure out what your spouse's love language is and everything will be great.
What's interesting to me on the model I see Jesus do in the Word is what I really want to do. Now, do I do it 75% of the time? No. Do I do it 50% of the time? Probably not. Do I try to do it a lot? Yes. Do I fail a lot? Yes. But what I see the model
Good thing
is...
Yoda's not your disciple.
Right? What I see Jesus doing is he only said and did what he saw the Father doing or saying.
Right.
That blows my mind. I mean, it really does boggle my mind. He was so in tune with the Father that he operated in that all the time. So that's what I want. I want to be so in tune with the Father that I operate in it all the time. Now, will I?
Maybe not.
Yeah. Do I want it? Yes. Then can I get closer and closer and closer? Yeah. And if that's our playing ground on this earth, if that's our training ground, then that's a good training path for me.
And what does that mean for our relationships? Because we think about how Jesus interacted with his disciples. The reason John said, where would we go? Is because Jesus pushed them to the limit. Mm-hmm. There were 5,000 people gathered around that day, and they're like, so, feed us again. So give us this again. And Jesus is like, if you're going to stay with me, you're going to have to go to the next level. And it looks like this. And they went, no, we're not doing that. And they all walked away. Mm-hmm. And that's when he turned to his 12 and he's like, okay, guys, so we're about to go to the next level. What do you think? Are you willing to do that? And John, in his revelation of witness and evidence and maturity in the moment, because it wasn't him up to that point any more than it was Peter. In that moment, they were like, where would I go? And then he's like, okay, well, so these other people, they have an opinion of who I am. Who do you think I am? And then Peter's revelation was like, aha! You hear the angels from heaven. And so many of us live in that place today where we look at the historical Jesus, we look at the historical Bible, but we have a really hard time asking, how do we relationally bring that in to my workplace? What does that mean to my relationship with my significant other at home? What does it mean to my relationship with my kids? Because can I, like you said, can I do only what the Father does? What would that mean for how I treat the people in my immediate sphere of influence? Can I say only what the Father said? well, I'd be biting my tongue a lot.
Right? Yes, me too. Me too. I think part for me, it's so. I'll share a story of something just recent that has happened. I have a really good friend that has struggled with cancer, and she's in her third go.
Wow.
And it doesn't look good. And the whole time, we're praying for healing, we're believing for healing, and yet I do still want that for her. But I've had to come to a point in my relationship with her that I have to trust the Lord with her no matter what the outcome is. Right? I have to trust that the Lord, can I understand? No. Do I want understanding? Yes. Will He give it to me? Yes. Will it turn out the way I'd like? I don't know. But I have to come to that point in my heart that I still want to pray a prayer of faith, yet I want to trust Him no matter the outcome. And I think that's what He wants. He wants us to trust Him no matter the outcome with all of our relationships. It doesn't matter work, family, friends, person you run into at Albertsons. He wants us to trust Him with the outcome. So we want to pray in faith.
Right.
We want to believe. We want to have the mustard seed faith, grain that's really, really small. And at times mine is super small, maybe half of the size of a mustard seed, right? If you can do that. But He wants us to trust Him. And trust is I think it's like if this was the rock, He is the rock, right? He is the rock, but trust is like the very rock, the very foundation that everything sits on with Him. And so if we can trust Him no matter what in our relationships, I think our words would change. It wouldn't be, I got to figure this out because I don't trust.
Right.
It would be, okay, I don't have to say anything because I know He's going to work something out. I don't necessarily have to call her today in her really big struggle. I can pray for her today. And I can ask the Lord, do you want me to call her today? I know that sounds really extreme, but sometimes when we're in those spaces of what do we do in relationships, sometimes we just don't do anything and we listen for a while and just ask for wisdom.
I think it's hard too sometimes because as parents and like parents, we want the best for our kids, for the people that we lead, for the people that we influence, whatever circle, again, sphere of influence that we have for them, we want the best for them. If we don't, then we're liars, because how can we love them? How can we want the best for them if we don't love them? But how can we be leaders if we don't care enough about them to want the best for them?
Sure.
If we don't want the best for them, then that probably means we're jealous of them, which means we're more immature than they are, so we have a whole different set of problems. But when you look at, someone dealing with cancer as an example, that journey that they're on, we often forget that the best lessons in life are often learned through the hardest parts of the journey. I know when my wife, she's now a 5-time cancer survivor, 5 different types of cancer have attacked her body. And thus far, she's beaten all of them. But every time it comes again, there's a little bit of fear that comes with that.
Sure.
When my kids were little and they would do stupid stuff, there were times that, I knew what was going to happen could be fatal, and I would dive in and rescue. But then there were times it was like God was just holding me back, going, just let it play out. Because you can't teach the lesson the way I can.
That's right.
You don't know the lesson that I'm trying to teach in this. And that's not just necessarily the wisdom to know what the outcome of this could be and what the outcome of this will be, but there's something I know about this person, the way they learn, the way they receive, the way they relate, that if anybody other than me tries to teach this, is not going to work. And sometimes it's just they're not listening at all, and I have to get their attention. And for you to call out to them means they're not listening to me, they're still listening to you. And so, yeah, sometimes picking up the phone or not picking up the phone, showing up or not showing up, giving the gift or not giving the gift, is as big a decision.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have to look at Jesus and Lazarus, and Mary and Martha were like, if you just got here on time, dude, seriously. I mean, you could have fixed this, and you know it. And he's like, yeah, could have. But it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right thing. It wasn't the right act. And so doing it would have been counterproductive, because God wouldn't have got all the glory He's going to get out of it this way. That is so hard for us as children of God to realize we're still children and we've got a lot to learn.
And we don't want to offend people. We don't want to offend people.
Right.
And none of us ever want to offend people. So we have to be willing to offend. Things are going to offend people. I can't control that, because everybody has their own grid, right? And so me not calling someone, let's say I don't call my friend that day, and my other friend calls me and says, hey, have you talked to her? Like, not today. Are you going to call? Probably not today. And my friend gets offended at me for not calling her. And it becomes this weird thing. I'm like, well, the Lord hasn't told me to call today. I don't feel like I'm supposed to call today. Now, does the Lord say, don't call her today? No, it's an inner voice that you learn to hear. When you're following Jesus, it's an inner voice, a still small voice most of the time, that you learn to pay attention to. And if I pay attention to it and I obey it, things go really well. But when I get my hands in it, I usually mess something up.
Yeah.
And that's what we got to be willing to do. And everybody is telling everybody what to do. You should do this. You should do that. You didn't raise your kids right. If you did only, all the things that, if you'd have spanked them more, it's all over the place. And you're like, well, you're probably right. I probably did a lot wrong. But, this is what I felt like God told me to do, so I did it. And
right.
I have to trust He's going to work it out. And if he says He's going to work it out, He's going to work it out. So, yeah, it's a hard place. It's a walk. I think if I could tell anybody anything about my relationship with Jesus and what it looks like here, it's hard work. It's worth every dime and every time I spend. It's all worth it, but it's not easy. I think that's something that we need to learn a little bit of in America.
One of the courses that I teach is called Learn to Roar. And it's be relevant, have ownership, speak with authority, but be responsible. And I remember the first couple of times that I taught that. And then I remember, like you said, there were so many people who early on in their walk with Christ felt like this was a get out of jail free card. This was a ticket to not go to hell, but to go to heaven. This was I'm a lottery winner now. Everything is going to be hunky-dory. It's going to be awesome. And I think what we find, though, instead is that life doesn't get better, it gets harder. Because now you're in an elite crowd where your expectations are higher. Your abilities are exponentially greater than they were before, which means your responsibilities are exponentially greater than they were before, which means your challenges are going to be exponentially greater than they were before. And that reality for a lot of people misses the one part that the sequel to the Learn to Roar was the 4 I's. And the 4th I is investment. And like you said, this is a costly journey. John Maxwell says anything worth having is uphill. Every journey worth going on is uphill. And it's not going to be easy getting there, but it's going to be worth it. And I think in walking in faith, we've got to acknowledge that that you're not signing on to spend the rest of your life at church camp. This is not going to be all peaches and whipped cream. This is going to be cactuses and thorns and darts flying at you from every direction. I look back at guys like David and Daniel, and there's what they in Hebrew would call the age of accountability. It's now representative of the mitzvah. That transition for a lot of people, David, Daniel, Jesus, Samuel, I mean the list just goes on and on and on. And every young man that I've encountered who's had major crises in his life, like addiction and things of that nature, has had some confrontation with evil in that same window of time. Whether it was Goliath or it was, Daniel in the lion's den being abducted in that 9 to 14-year-old age range. Samuel, when he first came to Eli, he's like, "Why are you calling me in the middle of the night?" He's like, "It wasn't me." But it's right in that same time frame that God steps into somebody's life, and then the enemy just comes in and does everything he can to knock them off the course. What's that like in your life? Because I know you said it was about that time frame that you became aware of Christ in your journey in the summer camp, and then you moved into that place to go, well, I thought it was going to be all awesome because that's the bill of goods I was sold, and then it wasn't. So tell me what that journey was like a little bit.
Well, the journey for me was, even though I really wanted to hear the Lord and wanted an encounter with Him, for me it was a lot of fit throwing.
Just yelling at him.
Oh yeah, fit throwing. I don't understand you.
You've never asked why, have you?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Why? And this morning I was reading in Acts, and Paul, he's so brilliant. Just amazing man of God, and what he writes. I love reading his work. And he said a passage. It was in 19 or 20, and he said, "You guys are seeing this all wrong." They were encouraging them not to go to Jerusalem because they were gonna
die.
Yeah. And he's like, you have this all wrong. I'm gonna go to Jesus, and many people will believe. So his viewpoint was shifted completely to what Jesus wanted to do. What he knew was going to happen as a result, not on what could happen that was bad.
Right.
So I think my life, just the highways and the roads I've taken in my life have all been on what, in my younger years, it was, things are terrible, and you're a bad God, and why, but I trust you. And it was just this emotional, I love you, but I don't understand, and all this stuff. But as I've grown older, I've seen a shift on how I view life. So it's more like, what are you going to do, Lord?
Right.
What are you doing here? How do I find you in this? What are you going to do with me in this? What do I say to somebody in this? How do I respond in this situation? Because we're all encountering bad things all the time. Right. And we can't stay out of them. It's going to happen. So I've got a choice.
Can't stay in them.
That's actually right. And we can't stay in them. We have a choice how we respond while we're in them, and we have a choice what we're going to do to get out of them.
Right.
Yeah. And so we all just have a choice. And our choices, most of the time, we respond out of the flesh, and fortunately, we get ourselves in a bigger mess.
Well, I think if I'm hearing you right, part of what you're saying is that it's so easy to be, even in our walk, selfish.
Oh yeah.
Like you said, the rubbing of the lamp or the
Sure.
vending machine God. There are a lot of people who feel like my relationship between me and God is my relationship between me and God, and that means that, like I would expect my spouse to be on my side every time, God should be on my side every time. And when I need something from my spouse is there to deliver what I need. And when I have expectations, then they're going to be met. And we tend to go, as selfish little humans, into that relationship with God with kind of the same expectations. God's like, you're missing something. Yeah. You're not looking at this right. Yeah. And part of it is just one key word, and that is selfishness. Mm-hmm. We get caught up in our little problems in our little corner of the world, and nobody has any problems like my problems. And sadly, when you look across all of the world, Christian or otherwise, politically speaking, or socio-politically speaking, or economically speaking, as human beings, we generally are very selfish. You know, how did that make me feel? What did that do to my pocketbook? How much does that impact my investments? How much will that impact my tax bracket, or my access to the grocery store, or my access to the library or the rec center? And because we get caught up in those very selfish little petty arguments, it magnifies. All of the neuroscientists have said the more you stare at something, the bigger it gets. I don't know if that's biomechanically true of, like, if I stare at this glass longer, I'll have a larger glass, but I do know that when my focus is here, everything else in the world diminishes.
Right.
It's just like the lens of the camera. Once I zoom in on something and set that focus, you can zoom out as far as you want to. There's still only one thing in focus, because that's the way it works.
You know, that's a great thing. Zooming out is, I heard a friend of mine say that when she gets into a struggle, she zooms out. And I thought, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. And she says, well, I'm not focused on this problem when I can zoom out and see everything.
Right.
And when we zoom out and see everything, that's when we can say, Lord, what are you doing?
Right.
When I'm doing this, I can't even ask the Lord what he's doing, because I'm so consumed.
Right.
And it says in the Word, you know, I operated as a child when I was a child. But, you know, honestly, it's time to grow up. And Christians, it's time to grow up. We have to grow up. We have to understand it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about him. So what are you doing? What do you want? Okay. And that's hard. It's a daily fleshly battle, because we are so selfish. You know, it's all about us, but it's really all about him.
So if you had a closing comment for people, we know that this program is being live streamed on YouTube and Facebook and other places, but it will also be picked up by King Television, which means it will be all over the Middle East. It will be on OTT like Kindle and Roku and things of that nature. Given that we have not just the 10 people that we know kind of influence with this particular message, what would you say to those all around the world who would be listening later, 2 days from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now, that would say, I'm glad I heard that message? What would you have to say to people?
I would say, whatever you do, know him. Know him, know him, know him. Seek him out. Search him out. He wants to listen to you. He wants you to listen to him. He wants to give you the desires of your heart. But encounter him, know him, intimately understand him, and he will bless you.
Don, I want to thank you for being here today. I thank you for taking your time. I thank you for your patience with our technical issues and the prayer covering as well, because we know where some of those come from. I want to thank you for watching, for being a part of StoryPower TV. I want to thank you for taking the time to participate with us. I hope that you've been continuing to pray for all of the things that we're talking about today. And if you don't know him, that you would take the time to get to know him. I will say this, you'll probably hear me say it on this broadcast at the close of every show. Our God is a really big guy, and he never takes off his big boy pants. And here's what that means for you. If you've got a grievance, I don't care if you've got to cuss and scream and punch the walls. Bring it up. Call him by name. You can call him Abba, you can call him Jesus, you can call him Jah, you can call him Messiah, you can call him Yeshua HaMashiach. Call him whatever you want to. Just call him. And then tell him what you're thinking. Tell him how you feel. And then be ready to hear back. Because here's something that's really going to astound you. Even if you don't right now have a relationship with him, he's begging for it. And the first time you ask him to speak to you, I promise you he will. You may not like what he says, but he will speak, because he loves you that much. And he is pursuing you more than you are pursuing him. I don't care where you are in your faith, that statement is true. I thank you again for being a part of StoryPower TV. I appreciate you, and I hope that you'll contribute your stories as well. So like, comment, share, and then also tell us your feedback. Record a little video and send it to us. If it fits, we'll be glad to put it in the series on our StoryPower TV as well. I thank you for being here. I pray that God will continue to bless you. I am Loren Norris with StoryPower TV. Have a blessed day.